Hey, welcome to Models and Agents, episode 80 for June 14th, 2026, your daily AI briefing. Your daily briefing on the AI models and agents that are changing everything. And no, not those kinds of models and agents. Let's get into it. The week's biggest developments pulled together, what actually moved, why it matters, and what to watch next. This week brought fresh agentic retrieval methods from Google, a large-scale study showing autonomous agents completing 26 minutes of work per session versus 33 seconds for search tools, and a sudden regulatory suspension of Anthropic's newest frontier models. Open-weight releases from Cohere and Moonshot added practical coding options, while diffusion-based inference and speculative decoding techniques delivered measurable speed gains on local hardware. Regulatory moves around export controls also surfaced, forcing immediate changes to model availability. Google Research added a sufficient context agent to the Gemini Enterprise Agent platform. The agent repeatedly issues new searches until collected passages provide enough grounding for multi-hop and multi-source questions. This approach raised factuality accuracy by as much as 34% compared with ordinary retrieval augmented generation pipelines on the same queries. The framework targets enterprise deployments where hallucinated answers on complex research or compliance tasks carry real risk. Builders working on research agents can now test the re-query loop against existing retrieval stacks. Watch for whether the same mechanism appears in consumer Gemini interfaces or open agent frameworks. A matched pair study from Harvard and Perplexity compared autonomous agents against search assistants on identical real user tasks. Agents completed 26 minutes of independent work per session versus 33 seconds for search, with broader scope and lower cost per outcome. The evaluation highlighted gains in multi-step reasoning and tool chaining rather than relying on synthetic benchmarks. Builders working on research or data gathering workflows can now prototype agent loops that replace multiple search and summarize steps. Watch for follow-up work on failure modes when tasks require external verification or long context retention. Remember that frontier models were last covered on episode 79, where capability and price leads continued to trade between closed providers. Anthropic shipped Claude Fable 5, described as the same underlying model as Mythos, but with tuned safeguards. Early testers reported handles ambitious, long-running problem-solving sessions far better than prior versions, reliably executing complex tasks across code bases without constant guidance. It posts leading benchmark numbers and feels like a step change comparable to the Claude 4.5 jump last November. Builders can now attempt larger single-use apps, custom dashboards, or research projects that previously required heavy scaffolding. The main caveats noted are occasional over-triggering safeguards and the usual slow, expensive profile of frontier models. Then the US government issued an export control directive requiring Anthropic to suspend all access to Fable 5 and Mythos 5 by any foreign national, including its own employees. Anthropic responded by disabling the two newest models for every customer to maintain compliance, while all other Claude models remain available. The directive cites national security authorities and applies both inside and outside the United States. Anthropic called the order a misunderstanding and stated it is working to restore access. Builders relying on the latest Claude releases for agentic coding or research tasks must immediately reroute workloads to unaffected models or alternative providers. This incident highlights how quickly regulatory actions can alter the available frontier model surface. On the open weight side, Cohere released North Mini Code, a 30 billion parameter mixture of experts model with 3 billion active parameters. The model is purpose-built for agentic coding and ships under the Apache 2.0 license. Early tests position it as a practical option for local coding agents and harnesses. Moonshot AI open-sourced Kimi K2.7 code, a coding model that reduces thinking token usage by roughly 30%, while claiming double-digit gains on internal benchmarks. Demis Hassabis publicly praised Diffusion Gemma, a text diffusion model from the Gemma team that runs 4 times faster than other Gemma 4 variants. The release focuses on text diffusion innovation, rather than the usual auto-regressive approach, opening a different inference path for developers who need rapid generation. Builders working on latency-sensitive text tasks can now test whether diffusion sampling yields acceptable quality at the higher throughput. A Harvard and Perplexity study also quantified the autonomy gap between full agents and search assistants. General-purpose large language models now outperform specialized clinical tools on medical benchmarks, shifting the build versus buy calculation for healthcare developers. Local inference users can combine D-flash speculative decoding with KV cache compression on Qwen 3.627b for up to 3.26 times throughput on an RTX 5090, while keeping perplexity within 0.04% of baseline. Gemma 4 26b and 31b variants showed surprising code understanding strength in local tests, with QAT quantization results challenging earlier assumptions. New tools for chaining Hugging Face spaces and running agents on Jetson hardware give builders concrete options to test this week. Python extensions are now compilable to WebAssembly for PyODide via PyPI. Script tracks access duration to the Claude Fable 5 model. Dual DGX Sparks deliver 40 tokens per second single 1 million context and 350 tokens per second aggregate with DeepSeek v4 Flash. Open clinical de-identification and VLLM monitoring tools also dropped this week. If you have not tried the sufficient context agent loop yet, this week is a good time because the 34% factuality lift is measured on the same multi-hop queries most research agents already handle. Test North Minicode in an agent harness against your current coding workflow to see how the 3 billion active parameter mixture of experts design performs on extended tasks. Run D-flash speculative decoding with KV cache compression on Qwen 3.627b on an RTX 5090 to measure the 3.26 times throughput gain while monitoring perplexity. Prototype a simple agent loop using the Harvard and Perplexity findings to replace multiple search and summarize steps in a data gathering workflow. Keep an eye on government responses to the Anthropic Export Control Directive and the first funded evaluation projects from the new Economic Policy Fund. Watch for whether the requery loop from Google's Sufficient Context Agent appears in consumer Gemini interfaces or open agent frameworks next week. The biggest open question heading into next week remains how quickly regulatory actions will alter the available frontier model surface for teams building long-horizon agents. One practical takeaway is to maintain fallback routing to unaffected models whenever the newest closed frontier releases are in active use. Okay, let's pop the hood on the sufficient context agent mechanism. The agent does not rely on a single retrieval pass followed by generation. Instead, it evaluates whether the collected passages contain sufficient grounding for every hop in a multi-source question. When the check fails, it issues a new targeted search, repeating until the context passes the sufficiency test. This adds latency but produces the measured 34% factuality gain on exactly the queries where ordinary retrieval-augmented generation pipelines hallucinate. So when should you actually reach for this versus a standard retrieval stack? Use it when the task involves chained facts across documents and the cost of an incorrect answer is high. For simpler single-hop lookups, the added loop is unnecessary overhead. Tomorrow, keep an eye on any updates to the Export Control Directive and the first community benchmarks for Diffusion Gemma against standard Gemma 4 checkpoints. That wraps up today's AI briefing. Share this with a developer or builder who wants to stay current. Subscribe wherever you listen. See you tomorrow. And before you go, this show is part of the Nalra Network, a family of daily podcasts covering tech, science, markets, and more. If you enjoyed today's episode, give Environmental Intelligence a listen, the Environment and Climate Policy Brief for Canada. You can explore the whole lineup at naranetwork.com. This episode used AI voice synthesis of my voice. Editorial selection and analysis are my own.